currently in attendance, and thanking each of our speakers who have taken time out of their schedules and the important work that they do to speak to us today. My name is Fiona Herzig. I grew up in Northern Virginia, and I'm currently a 3L at Pace University, where I'm pursuing a certificate in environmental law. So I'm personally very excited to learn more about pro bono opportunities in environmental law, and I'm thrilled to be moderating this panel today put on by the Washington Council of Lawyers. The Washington Council of Lawyers is the only bar association in DC dedicated to the promotion of public interest law, and each year the Washington Council of Lawyers hosts the DC Pro Bono Week to celebrate pro bono work. DC Pro Bono Week connects attorneys with ways to volunteer, provides opportunities to learn new skills, and lets us meet other pro bono lawyers through events such as today's panel. There have been many events this week that hopefully some of you have been able to attend, and today's panel is going to focus on finding pro bono opportunities that help the environment and communities that are most impacted by climate change. Our panelists will touch on how you can help further environmental initiatives through litigation, advocacy, and even highlight some non-legal volunteer opportunities. You do not need to be an environmental lawyer or have any technical knowledge for any of these opportunities, so we are all in luck. And in a few moments, I'm going to ask that each of our panelists introduce themselves and their practice, but I first would like to note that our panelists who are speaking today are speaking in their individual capacities and not on behalf of their organization, so please just keep that in mind during today's discussion. Also, we encourage all of you to engage with us on social media, but just ask that you please do not directly quote our panelists without seeking their permission beforehand. So before we jump in to today's discussion, I wanted to pose a question to everyone in the audience. We're very interested in your level of experience with volunteering, so if you would all just take a moment to drop into the chat if you have experience with any pro bono matters prior to this panel, so you can just indicate this with a yes or no in the chat. And if you're a law student like myself, you can also indicate that, and welcome all. I am seeing a lot of pro bono experience, which is great. Okay, awesome. So thank you all for that. And now I would like to turn to our panelists and have them introduce ourselves. So if you could each just introduce yourself, the position that you currently hold, and just touch on your organization and your mission, that would be amazing. And we'll start with Lawrence.
Thanks, Fiona. Hey, everyone. My name is Lawrence Pittman. I am an assistant regional counsel in the RCRA and Toxic Enforcement branch at EPA Region 6. So I'm located in Dallas, Texas. I also currently serve as the ABA Public Service Chair, and I'll be able to speak on some of the public service and pro bono opportunities that we offer through ABA SEER, which is the section of Environment, Energy, and Natural Resources. And I look forward to today's discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. Christine, if you would introduce yourself and your organization.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Christine Perry. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a staff attorney with the Environmental Law Institute here in Washington, D.C. Our organization really strives to make environmental law and policy work for people, places, and the planet. My involvement is primarily in the international programs. However, I do run our pro bono clearinghouse, which I will be telling you more about later, and ways that you can get involved and take on pro bono matters. I'm really excited to be here today.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. And last but not least, Sam.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sam Krause. I'm a litigation fellow at the Animal Legal Defense Fund. We were founded in 1979. We're based in the Bay Area, but we work nationally. Our mission is to protect the lives and advance the interests of animals through the legal system. We work to protect companion animals, wildlife, animals used in entertainment and research, and animals raised for food. We have a policy team and a criminal justice team. I work with the litigation team. We bring many different kinds of cases in state and federal courts. For example, we bring cases concerning consumer protection, First Amendment, and environmental law. We're always interested in thinking about ways to use state and environmental laws to protect animals, especially those in factory farming. So thanks for having me here, and I really look forward to the discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. So before we jump into the questions for our panelists, I just have one more question to pose to our audience. So as I was mentioning, you don't have to have any environmental experience or be an environmental attorney to engage with some of these opportunities, but I am just interested in who has experience with environmental pro bono work or just in your day-to-day legal practice. So you can, again, indicate yes or no in the chat if you have environmental experience in particular, and you can also let us know if there's a particular environmental organization that you've worked with in the chat. Okay, awesome. So we all have some new things to learn in today's panel. And we're going to kick things off with Christine. So Christine, if you could just tell us a little bit more specifically about the pro bono opportunities that ELI provides.
Sure. So I'm going to talk to you about the ELI Pro Bono Clearinghouse. It was launched, the years are running together. February 2022 is launched on Valentine's Day. And it really is a clearinghouse, a way for communities, individuals to post environmental matters that they have that they would not be able to bring forward without the assistance of pro bono counsel or legal aid in that type of situation. So the clearinghouse, it's a national clearinghouse. We also take international matters. However, at the time, we only have domestic matters located in the US. It's free to join. You don't have to be a member of ELI to join it. I believe I can put the website in the chat that if you aren't an ELI member, there's just a really brief application that you fill out. And honestly, it's just so I know who you are, where you're admitted to practice law, or if you're not admitted to practice law and what interests you have. So if you're interested in land and zoning issues, I can really quickly pull all the matters we have related to that and send it to you. We have matters ranging from small, what I'd like to call bite-sized matters, to matters that might take years and years of litigation. So we have some communities, some environmental nonprofits looking for 501c3 incorporation paperwork. I'd say that that's more of a bite-sized matter, that could be accomplished fairly quickly. There are matters related to Superfund sites, which are going to be a little bit more of a time ask of you. We also post matters that already have counsel, but they might be looking for local counsel in a certain jurisdiction. We can post matters that might have counsel, but they're looking for non-legal experts. So if you are a scientist, something like that, an engineer, we do encourage you to get involved as well. Additionally, we encourage law students or students to be involved. That's a little bit more connecting with me for that we wouldn't have you contact the communities directly, but I would have you look through the matters on our website. If one is of interest, I can contact the community directly, let them know that you're a law student and that you would only be able to provide research and not legal advice. And you'd have to be very clear with them that you are not providing legal advice. And you would have a little more contact with me behind the scenes just to make sure everything is working out okay and that the community's expectations are being met. So yeah, that we have a lot of open matters on our website now. So I really do encourage you to check them out. We also have free CLEs on community lawyering topics. I'll talk about one a little bit later, but we have one next Wednesday, November 1st, on how lawyers can help communities apply for government funding, all of the funding, federal funding that's coming out now, how lawyers can really help communities access that type of funding for them.
Awesome. Thank you, Christine. That's super helpful. Samuel, I'd like to pose that same question to you and just ask what the Animal Legal Defense Fund has in terms of pro bono opportunities. And if you could also highlight some interesting cases that volunteers have worked on in the past, that would be super helpful.
Sure. So we have over 2,800 volunteer attorneys in our network who have donated tens of thousands of hours and tens of millions of dollars in legal work. They assist with all sorts of things that can include research and writing, filing amicus briefs, and litigating with us. Our pro bono network also takes on community pro bono projects, like when members of the community contact us. They do things like help nonprofits, veterinary malpractice cases, service animal issues, trusts for companion animals, just to name a few. If you sign up through our pro bono network of attorneys, you can list your areas of interest, your areas of expertise, what jurisdiction you're barred in, and then we reach out when we have cases that might be of interest or might be local to you. To your second question, I'll just highlight one case where we had pro bono working with us. There was a property owner that owned an ice cream store in Pennsylvania that had a bear named Ricky isolated in a cage living in terrible conditions. And we sued, arguing that Ricky's confinement violated state regulations on treatment of wild animals. And under a settlement agreement, Ricky was sent to a wildlife sanctuary. When the owner violated that settlement agreement, we procured a second settlement, which led to the release of a further 25 animals from the property, and they were also sent to sanctuaries. And that was a case where we had pro bono representation. So there are lots of different opportunities, and people can express their interests and areas of expertise.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Lawrence, I'm interested in some of the opportunities that EPA might be providing, and also if there are ways that groups can get involved in pro bono work if people are interested in working with others through these volunteer opportunities.
Of course, you give me the two question, but that's okay. Ready for it. So with EPA, there are a number of different ways that you can get involved. Not even as an attorney, but just as a member of the public. The first that I would really highlight is the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council. That's a group and a task force of individuals who work on environmental justice issues across the country. And it's a way for you to not only be aware of some of the issues that are going on nationally, but also as a member of the public to have an input and a voice in the environmental justice issues that are potentially going on in your neighborhood. And so to dovetail into the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council, there is a link on our webpage. If you just search EPA Environmental Justice Neighboring and Communities, they have various. So I'm in Region 6. So we have issues that are, of course, focused on states that are within Region 6. So that's Texas, Louisiana, New Mexico, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. But there are other regions, of course, all throughout the country that focus on a number of different environmental issues. And so there is a webpage on our website where you can look at some of the other environmental justice issues that are occurring in various states throughout the country. So not only through the advisory council, but even being involved on a more localized and specialized area. And funny enough, that's actually somewhat of how I got my position at the EPA. I ended up going to an environmental justice training that was being hosted in Region 6 or Region 4, which is in Atlanta, Georgia, and got plugged in with their environmental justice group within the EPA in Region 4. And they hosted an environmental justice academy where they actually trained community advocates on, hey, here's how you be a successful environmental justice advocate for your community. And of course, me just coming out of law school, they were like, oh yeah, we could definitely use your expertise to tell us about all these executive orders that really hold some of the environmental justice laws. And so that was one way that I was able to really get connected to the EPA. It was a great opportunity for not only doing community service, but also pro bono work, because I'm helping teach the community advocates on how to use these various regulations to truly protect their environments. So those are two ways. And you asked me about group efforts. I was like, I remember this was a multi-layered question. So in regards to group efforts, group pro bono opportunities can be very difficult to find. I think sometimes when you have, maybe you're working with a firm, or you're working with an organization where you a lot of attorneys who want to provide their hours, sometimes you can't always find easy opportunities to do pro bono work. And sometimes I found myself as the public service chair for ABA-CEER looking for non-traditional ways to still do good work for the community that may not be legal work. So I'll share two photos really quickly a few photos of some of the public service work that I've helped organize. So I hope you guys are seeing my screen. So this is a picture of a few of the attorneys from ABA-CEER. We actually partnered with an organization by the name of, everybody's familiar with the NAACP. They are located, this was in Denver. And so we connected with them to do a public service project. And here we were actually doing some planting. So all these plants further down here, we just recently planted. And these are all either attorneys or environmental specialists in one way or another. And then we had, we went to a local, it was an African American West History Museum, and they had a small community garden here, and we were learning ways in which they could use help in terms of grant funding to get more funds to make this garden more useful for the community. And so, although this may not be considered pro bono work, and in terms of groups, really for me, I've just found out the most important thing is building relationships with organizations that you're looking to partner with, because we didn't think that through this opportunity we would be able to provide traditional pro bono work to attorneys. But by us going on this tour, working with the NAACP, we learned about some of the help that this museum actually needed in terms of grant writing and funding. And I know there were some attorneys who sought to partner with this museum in order to bring them help in terms of the grant writing. And I'll show two other pictures. We just did another conference here. And so the last one was in Denver. This is Washington, D.C. We went to a local museum. It's a Smithsonian and Anacostia Museum. And this is in Washington, D.C., a suburb right outside of DC. And we went and did some urban farming, or some work in their urban garden. So you can see this gentleman here holding a plant. Clearly, I did not get the dress memo because I'm still wearing a suit. But this was another way where we partnered with the local museum, and we saw their exhibit. And so here's a picture of their exhibit. Oh, if my screen wants to move, oh, it's acting funny. But we saw their exhibit, and then also we worked with an organization by the name of Groundswell, which does some solar, low-income solar services in the DC area. And so through that, they also, let us know that they also needed, help with some of the contracting and grant writing, but only through their presentation. So it wasn't upon their initial interface with them, but through their presentation, some of the attorneys who were in attendance at the public service project were able to learn more about what the organization does and provide services and really make those individual connections. So ultimately, I think it just all starts with building relationships with organizations that you're interested in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lawrence, for answering both of my questions. And it's also really helpful to hear how you got connected with the EPA as a law student who would love to be connected with the EPA. So going off of that and some of the more technical opportunities that you were mentioning, I know some of us in attendance don't have experience with environmental law, or especially some of the more specific areas like animal law. So Sam, I'd like to pose the question to you about what types of training Animal Legal Defense Fund might provide to volunteers, and if it's necessary to be involved in animal law prior to working with your organization.
Sure. So it's certainly not necessary to have experience or expertise in animal law before volunteering. In our intake form, you kind of just tell us what your experience is, what your interests are, and we try to match people in a way that makes sense. As for training, we have a number of webinars on our website that deal with many different areas of animal law for people who are just kind of interested in learning more. But in general, we get people who have different areas of expertise and have a lot to offer on our cases, and certainly no need to have expertise before joining.
That's good to know. I think a lot of people would be interested in helping out with that work. Christine, does ELI have any training opportunities for people that are interested in volunteering with either policy or government work that they might not have experience with?
Like I mentioned, the Clearinghouse does have free CLEs to give kind of primers on different topics related to community lawyering. I would say that not all of the matters that we post in the Clearinghouse are necessarily strictly environmental matters, that some matters are more nonprofit incorporation, tax questions. There's been questions about contracts for nonprofits. So even if you might not be a quote unquote environmental lawyer, there are definitely ways to get involved. Because I mean, so many areas of environmental law are so specific and really technical. I'd say that the type of matters we have are really expansive. In the next little bit, I will talk about one that really is reviewing contracts, but related to environmental issues. So if you know how to review a contract, you can do it. We really do want to bring in a wide group of people, because sometimes people that do only environmental law, they might be conflicted out of certain things. So, we are looking for a diverse group of people able to take on these types of cases.
That's awesome. And going off of that, just to pose to all of you, if you could speak about what types of attorneys usually participate in your pro bono opportunities. So are these mostly attorneys in private practice or working with nonprofits? I guess, Sam, if you can start on that would be great.
I don't know if we have what a typical attorney who works with us. We have a large number of different attorneys from different parts of the country working in different fields who volunteer. So all are welcome.
Lawrence, is that the same at EPA, or what types of attorneys do you usually have in your pro bono matters?
Yeah. So typically we have attorney. Well, some are typically environmental, but we also, in some of the pro bono opportunities that I found through just the involvement with ABA SEER, those sometimes are people who do have some environmental background, but sometimes they're not even attorneys. Sometimes they're specialists. Sometimes they're historians. Sometimes they're, people who work on air permitting things. So it really spans the gambit of people who get involved and who can get involved. Just similar to Sam, we don't look for a specific type of person.
That's great. I think along with training, another big concern is time commitment. So is there a typical level of time commitment that you're usually looking for in terms of what volunteers can dedicate to a certain matter? And then also just the time frame that these matters usually take. Christine, I guess you can start with that.
Sure. So I mean, it really just depends on the specific matter, that we will have communities come to us and say, I need an attorney by October 27th. And we do tell them that this is not really for rapid turnaround, that we can post this. But oftentimes the people that need an attorney tomorrow have ongoing needs, that it's not going to be a one and done type of thing. But like I said before, it really just depends on the type of matter that's submitted. Some of them might involve litigation, which would obviously be more of a time commitment. Some of them, it's contract reviewing that you could probably do, in less than a month. That it really depends on how much time you want to give. We're also able, if you would like to be involved in a matter, but you want to maybe work with someone, if you're a more junior attorney and you haven't really done these types of cases by yourself, we're happy to repost the matter saying we have an attorney interested, they're getting started, but they would like to have assistance. Some of the matters even come with people saying, hey, we have a paralegal that wants to do this. They just need an attorney to pair with. So it just depends. I'd encourage you to look at the open matters we have on our website. You do have to be logged in just for confidentiality reasons for the communities and individuals. But if you do have a question, you can always email me. I'll also drop our email in the chat and email the communities that they know best. And
Great. Lawrence or Sam, if you have any comments on time commitment that these matters usually require.
Well, I'll just say if it's assisting with litigation, the time commitment really varies. It could be a one-off research assignment, or it could be a long-term participation in a case through the various stages of litigation. And really the same for a kind of community project that we refer. It really depends on the kind of project it is and how much time a volunteer attorney has.
Awesome. Lawrence, is that the same for EPA?
Yeah, pretty much. It varies and depends. Of course, like with the one-off public service projects, those are typically about a day or so. But even through, and I didn't even get a chance to, I forgot to mention this, but through the work that I do with ABA SEER, we have other pro bono opportunities that are available through the Deep Carbon project. And I'll put links in it, but they also vary in terms of time. So yeah.
So great. I'm also interested in the advice that each of you have to offer for navigating different conflicts that might come up when volunteering. So Christine and Sam, if you could each speak to just reaching out to State Bar before getting involved with either ELI or Animal Legal Defense Fund, and steps that volunteers should take before engaging with pro bono matters at either of your organizations.
and I would say that I will drop this in the chat as well. We have a CLE that you can watch on conflicts. It addresses conflicts that you might have as a nonprofit attorney, as a firm attorney, as someone working in the academic space. I think the CLE can probably do a much better job than I can about describing it. But honestly, if you're working for a firm or anything like that, you go to your pro bono coordinator and they have the software, they have the technology to run that conflict checked for you. That it shouldn't be scary. That I really do encourage people not to be, obviously be cognizant, be aware that there might be potential conflicts, but don't let the fear of a potential conflict stop you from even looking into it. That I feel like a lot of times people are just so worried about there might be a conflict without anything behind that, just general nerves. And if you find a conflict, then you let them know, I can't represent you. And that's fine. And they will understand. But I think that it is something you can easily find out. And it shouldn't really deter you from attempting to even find out if there's a conflict.
Yeah, I totally agree. I don't have much to add. I would just say check with your organization, whoever manages conflicts, your pro bono coordinator, and maybe also the state bar if you have more questions.
Awesome. Lawrence, is there anywhere that volunteers should look specifically related to government attorneys and considerations that they might have in volunteering their time?
In terms of specific pro bono, and if you're a government attorney who potentially works for a state agency or a federal agency, I just avoid everything that's environmental. That's what somebody told me. It's like, look, you work for the EPA, there's a possibility that, no matter what you're working on, no matter how big or small, there's always a possibility it could potentially be brought up to the EPA. And so if you are a government attorney, I think you just have to be mindful of the fact of like what level of government that you're potentially working in and the potential ramifications of, although you start maybe working on something that's a small community project, if it could potentially have large scale effects that could involve different levels of government, you may want to avoid being involved in those type of legal matters. So that's why I stick to like the simple public service projects where I could organize and plant some trees and play in the garden during the day. So, but yeah, those are the main things I would be mindful of.
Awesome. So Lawrence, you already mentioned some great non-legal volunteer opportunities. Christine, I'd be interested to hear if ELI has any non-legal volunteer opportunities that you can highlight for people that might be looking for a little bit of developing other skills.
Sure. So through the Pro Bono Clearinghouse, you can get involved as a non-legal expert. So if you have engineering, science background, something technical like that, we're very happy to have you involved. Sign up for it. If something comes up that would be a good fit, we can email you. I'd say generally at ELI, we do work with non-lawyers. We work with scientists, again, non-legal experts on various topics. So I would encourage you to take a look at our website. If there's a program, a project that we're working on that you think you would have value added, reach out. We're always looking for new collaborations, new ideas. It really will just depend on the project and who's working on it, how far along it is, all of those things as well.
Awesome. Could you also touch on climate change opportunities that ELI has, and if you could share a specific example of a way to get involved with that, that would be great.
Sure. So actually in the clearinghouse, we have several matters that are looking for representation that are tied to climate change. One, I believe, is in the Northeast, and it's looking at a carbon sequestration program, and it's reviewing contracts for landowners before they enter into these arrangement for this carbon sequestration program. We also have 2 local matters in DC looking at sea level rise and the construction of seawalls in the DC area. So it might not be, you're working on carbon emissions, but you are working on the impacts and potentially the mitigation of climate change effects in both of those. There are several matters looking at protecting wetlands, which are really important for adaptation and mitigation projects. So, you're not going to see a matter that's going to be labeled climate change, but you are going to see matters such as the ones I just mentioned that are very related to helping mitigate the impacts of climate change.
That's great. And I know a lot of people will want to get involved in those opportunities. So thank you for sharing about that.
They're very cool. I will say all of the matters are very cool on the clearinghouse, but there are some really cool ways to get involved with climate change.
And Fiona, if I could jump in really quickly, the pro bono opportunity that I mentioned, and Priyanka thankfully put it in the chat. It's called the Legal Pathways to Decarbonization Project. And so that's another pro bono opportunity where attorneys can help draft model legislation to affect the climate change issue. And so it's also working with I think professors at Columbia or Harvard because they have a book related to deep decarbonization. And so it's another way that you as an attorney can do some pro bono work that is focused on the climate change issue.
Awesome. And in addition to climate change, I am interested, and I'm sure other people in the audience are interested in getting involved with EJ initiatives. So Lawrence, I know that both EPA and the CEQ are working on a lot of EJ related initiatives. And if you have any advice on how we can comment on those and be a part of that process, that would be really helpful to share some light on.
Yeah, sure. I think the best way to probably be involved in environmental justice issues is through the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council, because they, like I said earlier, they're open to the public. There are different like working groups and interagency task force that will also attend those meetings. And so it is a way for you to learn about the issues and then figure out other ways to potentially get involved. I think that would be the best way. In terms of commenting on certain things, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I am the right one to talk about that because most of my work is enforcement based. But I'm sure, like just by being involved with the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council, like that would be a great way and a forum to potentially comment on some of the environmental justice issues and just try to find more ways to be involved. I think that would be the best place to do that.
Great.
And may I jump in, Fiona?
Yeah, absolutely.
That I will say that in our open matters on the clearinghouse, we do have many matters submitted from environmental justice communities, including some in the Chicago area, in the DC area. There was a really interesting case in Brentwood, in DC, that was an environmental justice community. In New Haven, we have an environmental justice community. So we do have quite a few opportunities if you are interested in environmental justice.
Awesome. And in addition to your organizations and some other links that have been dropped in the chat, is there anywhere else that you recommend we look to find more volunteer opportunities, environmental, specific environmental opportunities?
I think you may have got us from all the. I think we may have put them all out there.
We have all the resources. Well, that's good. We have a good list going. And thank you for all that you guys have shared about each of your organizations. I think we can open it up to audience questions at this point. So if anyone has any questions for any of our panelists and want to drop those into the chat. And while we're waiting on some of those questions, Christine, if you could just speak about some of the best practices for volunteering and what in your experience has stuck out to you about good volunteer attorneys that you've worked with.
I mean, I think anyone who volunteers is great. That it's I appreciate all of them. I think what really helps us is when they communicate with ELI saying, hey, I've taken this matter, and update us on the progress of what's going on. So we, the ELI does not litigate, ELI is not advocacy, so we don't have a hand in actually handling the cases, but it is really nice to know that the communities that have come to us for help are receiving the assistance that they need. So I think, being in communication with whatever organization you're partnering with, being in good communication with the community that you're representing or assisting is really important, and setting reasonable expectations like you would do for any client, any matter that you do in your daily life, that those levels, that standard of care that you give your clients, you give your pro bono clients as well. I think that's really important, that it's that they deserve top-notch representation just as much as anyone else. Even if it's pro bono, that you still give it 100%.
I think that's really important. Sam, any great volunteering stories or any skills that you think we can build to help be the best volunteers that we can be?
Well, I just agree completely with Christine on the community projects. I'll just say for attorneys who work with us litigating cases, I think it's just the same strengths that make anyone a good attorney working on any case. And we're very much appreciative of attorneys who volunteer their time to help us out.
Great. So we have a question in the chat. And I think let's start with Lawrence. So Lawrence, can you share with us the best and or worst case or pro bono experience that you have had in your career thus far? So I'll give you a few seconds to think on that.
No, that's a good one. Worst, I don't have one of those. Best, I can definitely relate to. And this isn't environmental focus per se, but when I was in Atlanta, I did some work with volunteer Atlanta. What is it? Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Legal Fund, Legal Clinic. I'm sorry, AVLF. And they have a Saturday morning program where you can go and serve as an attorney, a pro bono attorney for people who are facing renter 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 issues. And so there were people who were potentially getting evicted, people who were facing uninhabitable like living conditions as a result of poor landlords. And I definitely remember talking to a few different clients during my time there, and just being able to provide them a resource with my legal knowledge, but then also giving them like actual tools in order to properly defend themselves and get them in a better situation. Um, th- those experiences were invaluable. And I think just like the level of impact that you can have doing pro bono, you really can't put a value on. And like you don't walk in the door and thinking like, oh, I'm gonna go, change somebody's life. You're like, oh, I'm here to volunteer. And when you're willing to put, your time and effort into, somebody else's situation, somebody else's cause, for no benefit of your own, other than, hey, I want to go do some good today. It really can be, really motivating as an attorney, and just really encouraging, not only for yourself, but to the people who are actually facing the issue. So yeah, that would be one of the best pro bono experiences I've had.
Thank you, Lawrence. Sam, if you could share with us your most memorable and or the worst pro bono experience that you've had thus far.
Sure. Well, I certainly don't have a worst experience, but I'll just give an example of a great experience. We were developing a case and had local pro bono counsel with a deep knowledge of the jurisdiction and the relevant laws. And I found it to be a great example of the way that pro bono counsel can help in a way that no amount of time on Westlaw could have been a substitute for it, to Lawrence's point about pro bono assistance being invaluable. So that's just one extremely positive experience I had.
Awesome. Thank you. Christine?
Well, I think like Lawrence and Sam, no bad experiences, but I think I'll be a little similar to Lawrence by saying this is not an environmental example, but my experience really is in human rights law. And now I work on the intersection of human rights and environmental law. But I used to, when I was in Columbus, Ohio, before coming to DC, between London and DC, I was in Columbus for a little bit, and I have experience with immigration law. And so I was working at a free immigration clinic, so representing an individual as his attorney, but also I met with him twice a week to help tutor him for his citizenship test. And I was so excited when he passed that, you know, even when I moved to DC, he texted me right before his first day that he could vote. And he just wanted to tell me how excited and how happy he was that he was voting as an American citizen. And it was just the best. So a really meaningful experience. And I think pro bono opportunities just, they're great. That they really do show you a wonderful, can show you a terrible side of humanity, looking at the issues that certain communities are facing, but they can show you really some of humanity's best.
Thank you, Christine. And I liked how you all highlighted ways to get involved with matters that are different from your day-to-day work, because I think pro bono work can be a good way to see other legal fields and get involved with different kinds of work than your usual practice. So I think that's also really important. We have another question from the audience directed at Lawrence. So Lawrence, you mentioned that a small local issue can grow into a much bigger matter. Can you provide an example of a smaller issue growing beyond what you expected?
Yeah, I can. I'm going to not be work specific though, because I don't want to get myself in trouble. So when I did the work that I was helping EPA with prior to being a part of the agency, this was helping with the Environmental Justice Academy that they were doing. Um, we were helping train community members on how to be environmental justice advocates. We're telling them the various environmental statutes that you can help apply to ease some of the environmental issues that some of these communities may have been facing. And I just know in Atlanta there are a number of different issues, and I keep talking about Atlanta because that's where I'm from, so that's why it keeps coming up. But there are a number of different issues that are happening across that state. If it deals with flooding, I know there's been some issues related to that have been really extreme, and that only is on top of the climate change issue because they're having these extreme weather events. And, a lot of these communities are really trying to advocate for help, and they don't know, where to go or how to properly do this, like on the ground community advocating for, just proper living. And so my training for these individuals, a part of the Environmental Justice Academy, turned to these people actually being, strong, like forward community organizers for these communities and really getting some relief for them. So I know directly, especially with like the flooding issues that were occurring, some of the watershed issues in terms of, having just like a clean watershed. And then also in terms of like some of the gentrification issues that were going on around the city as well. So all of those, like just by me being a part of that Environmental Justice Academy, helping being a trainer there and teaching them about some of the laws that they can use to protect their human health and the environment, like it really translated to them being able to be community advocates for their community, bringing about some change, and also just allowing these people to be at the table of these decisions that are impacting their everyday lives. And I think sometimes that could be missed with making sure that you have community involvement. So that would be one example. And thank you for the question, Kara.
Thank you, Lawrence. Well, I have a question for all of you as the 3L. How do you guys have any advice for how law students should get involved with pro bono matters or specific volunteer opportunities that any of your organizations have for law students would be greatly appreciated?
Yeah, so I can start. Sorry, Lawrence, do you want to go first?
You got it, ladies first.
All right, thank you. So as I mentioned, that law students can sign up for the Pro Bono Clearinghouse, that you would just fill out the form for attorneys. And when it says bar admission, you write in big letters, law student. So I know you're not an attorney, and then you are free to look at any matter that we might have. If you see one that's interesting to you, you just email me. I contact the community, and a lot of them are open to research by law students. For example, we just had a matter in New York. Actually, the person had just graduated from law school and was waiting on their bar admission, and they were really interested in a certain matter in New York. I reached out to the community, and they're like, absolutely, we have work for this person. And, I reminded them they are not yet an attorney. They cannot give you legal advice. I told the not yet admitted attorney they had to remind the community of that, just, really making clear that no one is giving legal advice in that situation, but the community was thrilled. There's another group in DC that is using a group of 2Ls, and they're providing research for the community. And I heard from the students, they're doing some really interesting work that they're enjoying. So we do have opportunities, and students have been able to make a difference. Oh, and sorry, I forgot 2 more ways students can get involved. Now it's just rolling off my tongue. I've paired students up with attorneys that are already working on pro bono cases. So 2 different attorneys, one in California, I think one in the Dakotas. 2 students reached out. They said, "Hey, one said, I'm interested in doing anything." I said, "Cool. I know an attorney working on a pro bono case. He's looking for help." Paired them up and off they went. Another student reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm really interested in this specific matter." I said, "Oh, there is an attorney working on it. Let me see if he's open to your help." And off they went. So that is also a possibility if there is an attorney working on a certain case and the attorney is open to the assistance.
Awesome. Lawrence, any or sorry, Sam, you can go ahead with any law student opportunities.
Well, I'll just say ALDF does offer internships. And just one other animal specific thing I'd recommend is many law schools have chapters of the Student Animal Legal Defense Fund, which hosts events and have other opportunities. And as a more general matter, I had a great experience doing clinics and internships during law school. And I know some law schools give credit for internships even during the semester. So I think that can be a great resource. And one other thing would just be reaching out to your school's alumni network, even cold calling or cold emailing people and seeing if they have work you can do for them.
I'm gonna go ahead and plug EPA's internship opportunities as well, because we also offer summer and I think throughout the semester as well. So if you check out like usajobs.gov, they're typically advertised there. I know our office specifically will be offering something in the summer. So if you want to come work down in Texas, in Dallas, come and join us. It'd be great. Other opportunities, very similar to Sam. I think you have to sometimes be looking in the non-traditional route. And if that means, I was going to plug being involved in the American Bar Association's SEER section. And so through opportunities like that, you can meet other attorneys, join various committees where you could potentially, write an article or be involved in various CLE programming to help, coordinate that. And so those are other like non-traditional ways to do non-traditional pro bono, but you could still end up doing legal work. So.
Awesome. We have a question from Christina in the chat. And she's wondering, is there pro bono work out there at the intersection of racial justice and environmental justice? Lawrence, I think you're muted, unfortunately.
Sorry.
There we go.
I guess I'm getting older and older every day. More often that happens. So I think that it's funny that you asked that question, Christina, because I believe I would say that environmental justice encompasses the issue of racial justice. And I would definitely think if you were to be involved in the National Environmental Justice Advisory Council, that would be a great way to really figure out, where some of those opportunities are locally and nationally.
Great. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank all 3 of you for all of the great advice that you've offered. I'm super excited to look more into these opportunities. And there's a lot of other opportunities and links in the chat for pro bono opportunities that we can all get involved in. So thank you everyone for attending. And we hope that this has connected you with some environmental pro bono volunteer work.
Thank you so much, Fiona.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much. And I'm happy to talk to anyone. I have my email in the chat, so please feel free to reach out. even if it's just about